So speaking of this, on this note from Mate here, said I heard yesterday some people talking about how their pension funds are down. Made me feel kind of sad. I think a lot of people are going to lose trust in the whole system and start learning about Bitcoin. I think so too. And let's watch this video here from Scott Besant talking about who owns the stock market. Who owns it? And then we'll talk about Bitcoin, and then we'll talk about how I think it's all going to play out. So here we go.
The distribution of equities across households, the top 10% of Americans own 88% of equities, 88% of the stock market. Households.
It's a good number, but that's not the point.
Of equities across households, the top 10% of Americans own 88% of equities, 88% of the stock market. The next 40% owns 12% of the stock market. The bottom 50 has debt. They have credit card bills. They rent their homes. They have auto loans, and we've got to give them some relief. That I was struck by the statistic from last year.
That's the message right there. Just as a bystander, I'm like, wow, okay.
All right. Or that I like the examples, and I was really struck by two different statistics last year. Summer of 2024, Americans took more European vacations than they had in history. Summer of 2024, more Americans were using food banks than they ever have in history. I went into two food banks near my hometown to ask, what's the story? And they said, it really takes, for a lot of people, it's a loss of dignity to walk in a food bank.
Of course.
But they were seeing a new phenomenon, that it wasn't their traditional clientele. It wasn't people who'd lost their homes. It wasn't people out on the street. These were working families who could no longer, $100 at the grocery store, that basket of groceries every week, they were missing 5, 6, 7 things, and they were coming to the food bank to top up. So that's not a great America. Record European vacation, record food banks.
So when we think about it like that, do we feel too bad for the stock market crash? It almost seems like a stock market crash would take money from the rich and give it back to the poor in some way. If the poor only knew about Bitcoin, if the poor could only afford a small amount of Bitcoin, that is the only way out for a lot of these people. Just think about it. Just think about this very simply. Let's say you had somebody on the street and you gave them $1,000. Wherever it came from, who knows? Gave them $1,000. Put that $1,000 in a savings account. You're going to try to change this person's life on the street. $1,000 in a savings account. Earning even a high interest account. Let's say it's earning 5%. You look back at that thing in about 10 years from now, what are you going to have? Maybe $1,100? Except that $1,100 is going to buy you significantly less than it does today. That's one system. Second one, you could buy $1,000 worth of stocks. You might get 10% a year, maybe. Days like this, much less. But we're not looking day to day here. Over time, you put that in 10% per year. Maybe you have, I don't know, $1,500 at the end of it. That $1,500 buys you much less than it does today. Not going to get rich, not going to change anybody's life with the stock market. But you take $1,000 and you put that thing into Bitcoin. You leave it for 10 years. What's it going to be worth? I don't know. I would guess much higher. I would guess that if you gave somebody $1,000 worth of Bitcoin today and you waited 10, 20, 30 years, if you held on to that thing for 30 years, you're not only going to change your life, but you're going to change your whole family's life. And that is the difference between the stock market and Bitcoin, and the savings account, the fiat system, and Bitcoin. One is stuck. One side is stuck, and it's never going to get any higher than it is today, in my opinion, because things are going to be made for less and less, and profits are going to go down and down from that consumer world that we're used to living in. And it's going to flow into Bitcoin. And that $1,000 is going to get you a very finite piece of the pie of the world, the future world reserve currency. So the best thing that anybody could be doing right now is just buying some Bitcoin. And on days like today, you can get more sats for that $1,000. So it seems to me like as the stock market, as everything crashes here, we can see who owns it. 90%, or he said 88% of people. Sorry, 88% of the stock market is owned by 10% of the people. And I would say that it's probably like 80% is owned by 1%. So as the stock market keeps crashing, that's taken from the rich people, not so much the pensioners. Pensioners are, I don't know, they're kind of in a weird spot right now because they're in a fixed income and everything else is going higher and higher. We're on a path right now that is not sustainable. And we need things like what's happening right now. We need this to happen. As much as people love to think that housing prices can go up forever, the stock market can go up forever, that's not a real world. That's not a real market. That's a totally manipulated, illusionary market. So I hope the stock market just goes to absolute shit. I do. Even though I will be impacted by that myself. But it has to end. It has to end here at some point because everything is just a complete lie. And what fun is it to live in a world that's just a complete lie? You spend time in that system, you're never going to get further ahead. You're never, ever going to catch up. You're just going to continuously be drained and drained and drained. And that's why with inflation, you have to understand that inflation only benefits the rich people because the rich people are the only ones who actually hold assets. And when inflation goes up, when they print more money, the value of those assets are artificially inflated. So even though inflation's going up, their assets, stocks, real estate, everything's going up with that. So some of them are, breaking even. Some of them are getting ahead. Some of them are probably losing a bit. But for the most part, if you own assets, that top 20%, you're going to be okay. The 80%, the rest of everybody else, life is just going to keep getting more and more expensive for you. So that's where we are right now. There's a huge gap right there. 20% of people, yes, they will break even or go up a little bit or down a little bit. But for everybody else, the 80%, life is just going to keep getting more and more expensive because you don't hold any assets. You just hold cash. And that cash is continuously losing value and buying much less than it did last week. So the rich people, that's what inflation does. It helps the rich get richer and it makes the poor poorer. That is horrible. And that's why we're seeing so many issues with our society right now for that simple fucking reason. That's it. Everything stems from that equation. And if you understand that, then everything happening right now makes total sense. I've spent the last 6 weeks in and around a very busy hospital in a big city. And this place is a fucking disaster because of that. It has nothing to do with the premier in this part or what the property taxes are or what the tariffs are doing. It has nothing to do with any of that. The problem is that a small group of people have the ability to create money. And when they create money, the rich people get richer and the poor people get poorer. That's the whole problem. Everything stems from that equation. And when you understand that, that's why you want to hold Bitcoin. Because not only is it a hedge, but it's the only fucking chance that we have here. So I don't give a shit what the stock market's doing. It's a complete illusion. Complete illusion. 80% of those companies aren't making a profit. They're just being propped up. The illusion is just being propped up by people being forced to contribute to that every 2 weeks. It makes no sense. You look at some of the PE ratios of the bigger stocks like Tesla, Nvidia, Apple, Microsoft. It would take 30 years. You make an investment, you buy one Microsoft share, it's going to take you 30 years. That's how inflated the stock market is. That's how what would you even call it? Overrated, not overrated, but the price of this market is too high. It makes no sense. It's just a complete illusion. So the faster this whole thing ends, the better that we're going to be overall as a society, as a species, everything. The faster this thing crashes, the better we're going to be. Take that one to the bank.